Hi guys, oh my god, I've turned this on, I've hit record in order for me not to have the time to think that I shouldn't hit record. So, the most important times to open your mouth and share and get stuff out of you is often when you least feel like it. And I've just been coming up the stairs at the station. For those of you who are in the members area of the channel, you'll know that I've been at Nanny Di's flat all day today, essentially reorganizing, decluttering, moving, adjusting, doing everything to make it more user-friendly for her carers, for me to care for her to be cared for. And this the topic of this, I guess, is carers and CAREE. This was partly inspired by a piece, actually, that was written by two of our followers, Michelle and Ian. Bless you guys for sending me your piece. It was an interview with the two of them. And it was a discussion about living with ME. And within that article, there was a section all about the challenges of being a carer and a CAREE. And, you know, I have huge mental health battles on a daily basis. You know, when one's dealing with all of the diverse neurospiciness of things like ADHD. But I mean, you know, as people say, everyone in a day has ADHD, and that's not to diminish it or minimize it, but there's nothing new in that. Add into the mix bipolar, add into the mix depression, anxiety, and addiction. You know, it's a heady mix of just shit. And so I've just got to be honest. So today I've been clearing out my mum's flat. I haven't actually thrown stuff out yet. And the reason I haven't thrown stuff out, I've just moved it around. It's like the most complicated form of Tetris, is because I don't want to have to say goodbye to any part of her life. And I'd be lying. And I'm talking about my mum like this because I know when she's of able mind and body, she doesn't watch any of the mental health stuff. She finds it too, bless her, she says, she finds it too distressing to hear me talking about my emotions. But equally, she's kind of not watching much on the channel generally because she's just not that way inclined at the moment. So she's at hospital, I'm sorting out her flat, need to kind of basically make more space, more room for more bits of kit to come in to make her life more bearable and more manageable, and to make the lives of her carers more manageable. And I thought, I can't throw anything out. It's like the moment that your parent, and albeit my mum has, she would say herself, not really been a parent, but she's my parent, she's my mum. You know, I've idolized her, I've looked up to her, I've tried to lean on her. And she's my mum. She's my ma. And however you skin this, she is now my dependent and I am her carer. And I wasn't necessarily expecting to talk about that aspect of it today. What I wanted to talk about was what Ian and Michelle talked about, which is the challenges for being in a couple, when you're in a relationship, when the nature of your relationship changes and shifts over time due to either an illness or a condition like ME, say, or mental health problems, that leaves one part or one half of the coupledom feeling like a dependent of sorts, or feeling needy, or the one who actually has a diagnosis, if you know what I mean. It doesn't help at moments like this to say, well, we do all have our mental health days. Nadia has bad mental health days when she's struggling, but she doesn't have a fundamental diagnostic thing that keeps snagging her life and pulling her down and pulling her back and stuff like that. And I have to say, it's really fucking difficult not feeling like you're a burden, like you're a huge albatross around someone's neck, that when you're the CAREE, the one being cared for, that you are somehow the injured one, the weak one, the one who needs looking after, the one around whom everyone needs to tread carefully. I mean, and the terrible thing around mental health, I'm sure this will resonate for others, when you've got mental health issues, when you're in a bipolar dip, when you're in a mania, even when you're in an up, you can see those who love you and those around you tiptoeing round the possibilities of what's happening to you, ending, changing, getting worse, or whatever. And so it's really hard to maintain, I would say sometimes, not your dignity, but it's really hard sometimes not to just lose confidence in the fact that the relationship or your relationship has only become what it has become, which is I'm the ill one and you're the not ill one. And as a consequence, it falls on the well one or the weller one to pick up the slack or pick up the mood or pick up the partner. Now, of course, vice versa, I'm exactly the same. I mean, Nadia has, you know, right now she's, you know, she needed a break. We said to her, take a break. You know, there are always times in Nadia's life or my part, you know, in anyone's partner's life where, of course, you know, they go through a down and you're all there for them. But it just struck me when I read Michelle and Ian's piece about how do you, it's really hard to not feel when you're a caree, when you're the one who's got the illness, it's really hard not to feel like you're a burden. And so then I began to wonder as I was on the train coming back, and I was thinking, oh my fucking Christ, I've just been, I've in sorting out or trying to sort out my mum's flat, making it more amenable for her to live in. And because she's a hoarder and because she, you know, her flat is like it's like a repository of everything that's gone on in our lives, all of our past relationships, exes, relatives who've died, people who've killed themselves, suicide. There's paintings by family friends who were like father figures, but who also were in love with her. There's eras past. There's stuff that I put in that flat when she first moved there, which I put in there with an ex. There's images of all my kids in happier times and sad times. And as I've just gone through all of her stuff and I'm moving things around, I feel like I've gone through a dummy run, if I'm honest, of what it's gonna be like when she's not here. And whilst that's very different to what I wanted to talk about, which was the whole carer, caree thing in terms of a relationship, I think I didn't feel anything antsy about doing everything. It was difficult, it was challenging seeing all these things, all these sort of shards of my life and her life, all her passions, all her obsessions, all her enthusiasms, all her sadnesses, images of her ex on the wall with who took her own life, and your images of exes of mine, that relationships that you know fell apart. And it didn't make, and because she is essentially now my caree, I don't feel anything negative about that. But I don't know whether it's different because she's my mum and she's elderly. But it just struck me as strange that I've got this whole kind of inversion and reversal of carer, caree, caring. Parents normally are the ones that are kind of looking after their kids. I mean, even though mum hasn't been there in that way, she's always been someone I could turn to, and she had an absolute knowledge of me. And that's going. I feel incredibly incredibly jagged, incredibly raw, incredibly torn at the edges. I don't actually, interestingly, I spoke to Nadia today, and I don't interestingly feel the fizz of a bipolar dip, but that's not to say that it won't necessarily come. You may have seen when I did Coffee Moaning this morning, the rage and fury I have around injustices and people, humans, so-called humans, who don't realize how emotionally cold they are in the way in which they talk about things like, you know, the genocide in Gaza, how dismissive and inherently selfish and entitled and privileged. And so one of the things that does happen when you're laboring under just life, adulting, the stuff of life, elderly parents, mental health having a bit of a wobble. You've got to be mindful, you've got to be careful that you don't fall into a bear trap, make a mistake, say something you regret. So going back to the carer-caree thing, sometimes I do, in my worst hours or my worst moments, I think, am I just a patient? Am I just someone that's bruised and injured and incapable of functioning without that support? And how much of that must be a stress and a pressure and a shadow over Nadia's ability to just love, or is that just being a human? I know I don't feel any, I suppose what I'm trying to say, the parallels I'm trying to draw with my mum is there's a lot that's gone on between me and my mum for me to easily resent so many things that are happening right now because of just things that I don't want to talk about. But I don't feel that. I genuinely don't feel that. I do want to look after her as best as I can, whilst also protecting my own mental health and sobriety, of course, because I've got family and kids and other stuff that I need to be mindful of. But just want to say thanks to Ian and Michelle, really, because I just think it's a really important discussion. I think it's a real challenge for all relationships when, especially if there's one who is a more obviously ill person. Because in a weird way, what then happens is the other person, the not ill person, has to sort of develop almost a kind of, not briskness, but they need to be made of Teflon. They need to be made of tough stuff. And then who do they turn to when the ill one is ill, when they're needing that sustenance and that support? So just a big shout out to anyone, people like Michelle, Ian, you do so amazingly well. And I'd like to think that most of the time me and Nadia do well. I want to say a huge thank you to Nadia. I'm so grateful for her, but I also want her to know that I am there when I'm not going through my things for her too. I think it's easy to feel, sometimes it's really easy to become just the caree. Like you can't, the assumption is made that you can't cater for someone else or cope with someone else or look after someone else. You can. So although I think relationships, especially when relationships in which one person has an illness, whereas obviously one person does become the caree, the other more the carer, I think don't try to avoid slavishly defining yourself with either. We can all be both. But right now, I feel pretty hopeless, if I'm honest. I feel really frightened, and I feel without siblings, and it's different in terms of having siblings who also know your mum. I mean, of course, I've got daughters, and she's got granddaughters, and I've got Nadia, but that absolutely direct connection to my mum, I realise how well I know her. I realise how well I get her. But I also realise how much I'm missing her more and more. I wasn't really expecting things to run like this. And I suppose no grown-up kid does. And I wonder whether sometimes if you've got siblings, you can mirror the reality of what's happening to each other a bit more. You can signal to each other a little bit more, and you can say, oh, have you noticed, Mum? I think I've managed to, or certainly up until last year when we went out to New York, I think I've managed to kind of keep myself in denial. But even if I have been keeping myself in denial, things have moved rapidly. Anyway, I'm not entirely sure if there's anything of any use or of any meaning there for anyone. But for me, it is important to open my mouth and say, right now, I feel I just feel really sad.